Друзья, всем привет! Как вы знаете, пару дней я был на Мюнхенской конференции безопасности. Это такое уникальная на самом деле площадка, на которой собираются лидеры со всего мира и работают, обсуждают. В общем, действительно уникальное место. Имел честь быть приглашенным туда. Тема этого года была такая Zeitenwende, она называется. И смысл, ну это в переводе с немецкого как такой водораздел, переломный момент. Потому что действительно переломный момент в истории, водораздел, и иначе не скажешь. Главная тема была Украина. Российской делегации не было вовсе. Что делать террористам в кругу людей, с которыми все-таки о чем-то друг с другом разговаривают, как не было бы сложно, потому что там был, например, Китай, и один из руководителей Китая, Ван И, но с этими разговаривать-то вообще не о чем, поэтому их туда никто не звал. Ну и, конечно, на полях такой конференции могу сказать, знаете, давайте скажу вам самый главный вывод, все-таки это очень важно. А вы не забудьте подписаться на канал, только здесь эксклюзивы из первых рук. Ну, действительно, там вице-президент США, президент Франции, премьер-министр Британии, канцлер Германии, ну все абсолютно первые лица. И вывод такой. Во-первых, они говорят, ну вот вы там сейчас услышите моих вопросы и ответы, но суть в том, что, конечно, они рассматривают Украину частью свободного мира. И говорят, вы будете в НАТО, вы уже Европа, это наша победа, это очень важные слова. Говорят, что будем с вами до конца, то, что сейчас сказал Байден, приехав в Киев, это общий месседж, он важен, чтобы Путин его услышал. Что не надо надеяться на усталость Запада, еще на что-то, надо просто прекращать войну и вываливаться. Да, потери огромные у России, но каждый день будет еще больше потери. Поэтому лучше уйти сейчас, попытаться сохранить власть, если он это хочет сделать, но уйти полностью с территории Украины. Другого варианта нет, дальше будет только хуже. И вот это ему был, собственно говоря, сигнал. Конечно, для Украины было бы важно услышать, что мы хотим победить в этом году. Эти слова там не прозвучали. А слова, что с нами до конца, нам, конечно, хочется быстрее. Но это уже, друзья, наша с вами работа, которой мы будем вместе заниматься. А знаете, общее настроение этой конференции, я, знаете, бы кем представил? Вот эта женщина замечательная, которую вы сейчас видите. Вот эта фотография, мне кажется, прекрасно иллюстрирует общее настроение на конференции. Это Натали Точчи, она руководитель, директор Итальянского института внешней политики. И просто обратите внимание на ее ожерелье и на ее обувь. Украинские цвета и леопард. Но я не знаю, что здесь еще можно сказать. Это было общее настроение этой конференции. И недаром российская пропаганда в истерике сказала, да, это вот оно, катастрофа, конференция войны, они хотят нас уничтожить. Посмотрите на лицо Соловьева. Обращаю ваше внимание, это еще до того, как Байден приехал в Киев.
На Украину всем плевать. США четко объясняет, что неважно, как сложится дальше ситуация, их задача уничтожение России. И они будут накачивать все то, что останется от Украины, либо те, которые придут ей на смену, всем, чем возможно. Главная задача уничтожения России.
Ну, вот такие у них лица, ну, потому что действительно, ну, они, чтобы мы просто понимали, 50 стран формата Рамштайн, ну, вот, которые были фактически на этой конференции, которые помогают Украине в военном смысле, имеют ВВП 50 триллионов долларов. Еще раз, 50 триллионов долларов. Для сравнения, ВВП России 1,8 триллиона долларов. Ну, даже если добавить туда Беларусь, оккупированную, Северную Корею, ну, там какое ВВП, там травы много, они ее едят. Ну, и даже Иран, ну, все это суммарно даже не дотягивает, друзья, и до, там, 5% того, с чем располагают страны, которые Украину поддерживают. Вот, собственно говоря, для понимания расклада. Ну, а теперь все-таки хочу вам рассказать, что там происходило. Я принимал активное участие и поднимал все важные для Украины темы. Итак, хочу вам показать на примерах. Итак, я поднял вопрос по поводу будущего Украины в НАТО и того, какие мы сигналы услышим на конференции в Вильнюсе. И в том числе я сказал, что НАТО всегда будет неполным без Украины, Молдовы и Грузии. Послушайте мой вопрос Йенсу Столтенбергу и президенту Молдовы Майе Санду.
Thank you very much. My name is Oleksiy Goncharenko. I'm a member of Ukrainian Parliament. And the topic of this panel is building the alliance, right? And I think the building of the alliance will be always incomplete without Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia. So I have two questions from this. First to Secretary General Stoltenberg. This year NATO summit in Vilnius, will there be a strong and clear signal that Ukraine will be a member of NATO, maybe by providing membership action plan or just by statement, but clear and strong that NATO is waiting Ukraine. And the second question is to President Sandu. Maybe it's the time for Moldova to revise the policy of neutrality. I understand that it's not just your decision, but I'm very much interested in what you personally think about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Secretary General.
So NATO's position on membership for Ukraine is unchanged. We agreed back in 2008 that Ukraine will become a member of the alliance, and that is still our position. Then, of course, what matters now is to ensure that Ukraine prevails as a sovereign independent state, because without having Ukraine as a sovereign independent state, there's no way to discuss any kind of relationship between NATO and Ukraine in the future. So the urgent need is to provide military support, as NATO allies and partners are doing every day. In that context, I also welcome the initiative from Prime Minister Sunak to actually have a discussion about the framework we need to ensure an enduring peace after this war ends. Because when the war ends, we need to make sure that history doesn't repeat itself, that Russia doesn't continue to invade Ukraine, because this is a pattern. It started in 2008 with the invasion of Georgia, then in 2014 Crimea and Donbass, and then in last year the full-fledged invasion of Ukraine. And we cannot allow Russia to continue to chip away European security, and we need to break the circle of Russian aggression against European countries. And therefore we need, when this war ends, to establish some kind of framework that ensures that Russia's aggression doesn't continue.
President Sandu.
Yes. Looking at what Russia does to Ukraine today, it's clear that neutrality cannot defend us. Neutrality can defend only when the other countries respect it. But you know that today there is no popular support, enough popular support to change that, and we know that, we understand that, and we acknowledge the situation. We can discuss why is that, and I think the Russian propaganda is to a big extent to be blamed for that. For instance, today, one of the lines of the Russian propaganda is that neutrality means that the country should not strengthen its defense sector, which doesn't make any sense. But unfortunately, there are many people in Moldova who are scared of the war, and they buy this kind of propaganda. So that's why I thought that we need to work together to deal with this, to counter this propaganda. But given the situation, as I said, there is no question now about changing the neutrality, but definitely Moldova should be helped to strengthen its defense sector, and Moldova should be part of the new European security architecture.
Ну и обратите внимание, Майя Санду, кстати, в своем ответе сказала, что она, в общем-то, за НАТО. Я думаю, что очень показательно. А Йенс Столтенберг, это важно, он сказал, Украина будет в НАТО. Не может быть, ни если, ни двери открыты, Украина будет в НАТО. Важные слова. Еще задал вопрос Жозепу Борреллю, верховному представителю ЕС по внешней политике, министру иностранных дел ЕС. Каллас, это премьер-министр Эстонии, Фредериксен, премьер-министр Швеции. Тут я задал вопрос такой, что да, победа это хорошо, но для окончательной победы, чтобы не было такого, что Европа это крепость, у ворот которой постоянно стоят варвары в виде России, нужно что-то с Россией сделать, ее нужно изменить, ее нужно деимпериализовать. Здесь речь не просто о победе, а о том, что Российская империя должна перестать существовать. И это вызвало там целую дискуссию. Послушайте этот момент.
Thank you very much, Alexei Goncharenko, member of the Parliament of Ukraine. I want to continue your line, and I have a question to High Representative Borrell and Prime Minister Kallas. My question is about Russia. And the question is, we are speaking now about European architecture of security. But if Russia as empire still exists, it will be like a fortress, under walls of which at the gates is staying barbarians. So the question is not just to defeat Russia today, but to de-imperialize Russia, to change Russia. And that is possible. Like we saw it in history. Spanish Empire does not exist anymore. Austro-Hungarian Empire also. Who benefited is here in Munich, I think that's the best place to speak about it. Who benefited more than Germans in the fact that now German Empire does not exist, but there is free, wonderful country. So is this, does Europe need policy to de-imperialize Russia? Not just to change Putin's regime, to de-imperialize Russia, to change it in order to really have a secure Europe. Thank you.
The question that needs to be addressed is the accountability regarding Russia as well. I mean, as after the Second World War, there was a Nuremberg Tribunal and there was a Tokyo Tribunal. The Nazi crimes were widely condemned across the world, and the effect of the Nuremberg Tribunal was that actually German people got to know about the crimes that the Nazis committed, and hence, you know, there is the change in mindset. There has been no such thing in Russia. So they are defining themselves through the empire, really, being the masters of that empire. And if people admire dictators, there is no obstacle in becoming one or submitting to one. So how to really, you know, tackle that cycle is that history matters. I mean, our history books were rewritten after we regained our independence to reflect all the crimes that were committed. It was not the same for Russia. They are teaching and learning from the Soviet history books. So the accountability is of utmost importance for the crimes of aggression, really to have, you know, the understanding also within Russian society, and also maybe the contemplation there. Without it, I don't think it's possible.
Question here in the third row. Oh, sorry, High Representative.
Look, this is still a deep socio-cultural question. Russia will not disappear, but it may change. Which Russia? Putin's Russia? Which Russia? Russia that win the war, occupy Kiev and make Ukraine a second Belarus? Or a Russia that is being defeated, and maybe there could be internal political changes? I don't know. But I can say the same thing about US. Which US? Biden US or Trump US? What would have happened with Trump in the White House? Would be in the same situation? No. So US, Russia, which US and which Russia? It's very premature to start thinking on the security architecture of Europe when we are in the middle of the war. And depending on the result of the war, the situation will be completely different. So let's concentrate our efforts on winning this war, keeping the door open to peace at any moment.
Yeah, but it goes, I mean, parallelly. I mean, if we think that let's concentrate on the war and not think about what comes after, then when the war is over, nobody talks about accountability anymore. Because it's done, let's move on, and then it would just repeat itself all over again. We have seen this in history. So we have to do it parallel. We have to talk about the accountability now. We have to work with the accountability now so that we would have sustainable peace in the future, that the imperialistic dreams that the Russians have, and I'm not talking about Putin, not Putin, it's the nation and what is in it. I mean, what are they celebrating really? Being the empire or not? Really, you know, we have to cut the cycle.
All these historical parallels, they always kind of end up in a dead end. But everybody says, you know, China, for example. I mean, no chance that China will become a liberal democracy. Well, you can argue that. well, what happened with Japan, what happened with South Korea, it's very possible actually to create stable, well-working democracies. You have to have a long-term view, but a very practical approach in the short run, I think.
Кстати, обратите внимание, Боррель сказал, что это будет мы должны добиться победы, не Украина, мы, то есть это будет наша победа. Тоже очень показательно. Еще одна важная тема, это, конечно, вот у меня была возможность поставить вопрос на конференции, я принимал перед Мюнхенской конференцией, было отдельное такое вот заседание, в котором принимала участие Урсула фон дер Ляйен, президент Еврокомиссии, президент Литвы Науседа и глава республиканцев в Сенате США Митч МакКоннелл. И там я поднял вопрос самый главный для нас вопросы, друзья. Это и о Черном море, которое нужно открывать, не только для зерна, но и для всех остальных товаров, и для металла, и для продовольствия, и для всех товаров, необходимых Украине. И второе, конечно, оружие. Оружие, которое нам нужно прямо сейчас. И хочу, чтобы вы услышали и этот момент.
Thank you very much. My name is Alexei Goncharenko, member of the Parliament of Ukraine, and I represent Odessa region, and we border with Moldova. And I want to shake your hand and say we will be together with you, like we stopped Putin army on the way to Moldova, and Moldova will be together with the European Union. We will do it together. I want first several words from what are the lessons from the war of Russia against Ukraine. I think that for years here in Munich there was discussions how for free world to coexist with the dictatorships. Let's be frank. And I think that Putin gave an answer. We can't coexist with dictatorships. The evil cannot be contained inside some borders. It's impossible. Either the free world will expand and be strong enough to stop the evil, or the free world will shrink and dictatorships will prevail. I absolutely believe, and Ukraine showed, that democracy matters, and democracy means the most pragmatic thing, because people know for what they're fighting, not for some emperor. Ukrainians know that we are fighting for our families, for our land. That means that free world is always stronger than all these evil empires. But we need to be courageous enough to make courageous steps in order to fight this evil. And I think that is the main lesson. And from this I have two questions. My first question is about the speed, about the pace of weaponry delivery. Because I'm here, my wife, my kids now in Odessa, no electricity, constant attacks, Iranian drones. And yeah, it's how it's symbolic. Where is Ukraine on the map, or where is Iran? But today this evil, these Iranian drones are falling on our heads, showing that again, the evil cannot be contained somewhere. But the problem is that we have this example of Patriot systems. If the decision on Patriots would be made last year, when it was absolutely clear that Putin would weaponize winter, today Ukraine would be in absolutely another situation. Absolutely. And this decision was made just now. So we need to make this decision quicker. I know that Leader McConnell, you, President von der Leyen, President Nauseda, you are true friends of Ukraine. If everybody in free world, all decision makers would be like you, we would now discuss another things in Munich. We would discuss how the free world showed the strength, how we will rebuild Ukraine. That would be a completely different situation. But we are where we are. And today the time is vital because we are paying with our best people fighting on the front line for these slow decisions about tanks, about Patriots, about fighters, and we need it quicker. And if we will receive some weaponry in 1 year, there is a question, who will use it? Who will use it? And Russia tries to use their unlimited manpower just to throw in their people wave by wave and killing Ukrainians and trying to fight like this and to win like this. So please, first question, fighters, tanks, quicker, please. That is so vital for us. And second question is about the Black Sea. Odessa is the biggest city on the Black Sea. And I think all these wars showed to the world again how Black Sea is important for the world. From times of ancient Greeks, the Black Sea is a breadbasket of the civilized world. And today, we see how Putin weaponizing food and food crisis and hunger in the world. And still, the grain corridor works very slowly. And why only grain? Why the free world is not saying to Putin, stop it. Commercial navigation in the Black Sea should be restored completely. All the goods, they are needed for the world. Is metal not humanitarian aid today after what awful catastrophe in Turkey happened? And they need a lot of metal today, but Ukraine can't export it. We can't export our food and other goods. So please, make a courageous decision. Stop Putin blackmailing. One last thing. We saw everybody how we should deal with Russia. When for 2 days Russia said in autumn, we're leaving the grain deal, but the United Nations and President Erdogan said, but we're continuing, okay, you can leave. In 2 days, Russians came back. Because the only language they understand is the language of force, the language of strength. So please, open the Black Sea for the benefit of the whole world. So these are two my questions. The Black Sea and the fighters, tanks, and the quick and the speed of weaponry supply. Thank you.
Alexei. I think we all share that passion.
Ну, как вы видите, активно все важные для нас темы были подняты. Санкции против тех, кто помогает российскому режиму тоже. Я выступал на сессии, задавал вопрос на сессии, посвященной Ирану. И там свой вопрос я адресовал сенатору Менендесу. Это глава комитета по международным делам в Сенате США, демократ. На этот раз демократ. Но и он прямо сказал, никаких сделок с Путиным. Никаких сделок с Путиным, друзья. Я думаю, что вот это, наверное, ключевое, на что я хотел бы обратить ваше внимание, что мир для себя сказал так, с этим все. Мы просто должны его победить. Как правильно сказал Соловьев, уничтожить этот режим. Послушайте.
Thank you very much. My name is Alexei Goncharenko. I'm a member of Ukrainian Parliament representing Odessa. And before I ask a question, I will just tell you a very small story. It was beginning of October. I woke up in my house in Odessa with my wife and two my kids because of explosions very close to us. And that was Iranian drones. Like for years, Ukraine was not taking active role about Iran because it was like too far away from us, you know. The same story about Belarus, one more dictator, Lukashenko, also people were saying, oh, it's not so interesting. After this, from Belarusian soil, Iranian drones come into our heads, falling in our hands and killing us. After this, Iranian regime shut down Ukrainian plane, civilian plane in the sky of Tehran, and now with Russian weaponry. And today Russia is killing us with Iranian weaponry. So I think the lesson is clear. We can't tolerate evil. We can't contain evil in their borders. It's just impossible. So the only thing we should do, we should fight with evil, and we should win, because free world is definitely stronger. So my question is to Chairman Menendez. You are very wise and respected and experienced politician, and you saw a lot of stories. Today, what can you say? Do you believe it is possible to have deals with dictators? What do you think about this? Because today, again, we hear that we need to have a deal with the Iranian regime, and others saying we have to make a deal with Putin's regime, with some concessions from Ukraine, which is for us unacceptable. So I just want to hear your voice and your opinion on this. Azadi Bera Iran.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you, and our admiration of the Ukrainian people. When I travel the world, I say there's one thing you cannot purchase. You can purchase arms from the United States, you can do a whole bunch of other things, but you cannot purchase the courage and the commitment to freedom that the Ukrainian people have shown. So my salute to the Ukrainian people and through you, their representative. No, you cannot deal, from my view, my family fled dictatorship. I understand what that means. And so for my 30 years in Congress, and in the last several as the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, it's about promoting democracy and human rights globally. You cannot deal with dictatorship or authoritarians, whether it be Putin, who creates an existential threat here in Europe in the 21st century, or in Iran. And containment never works successfully. The Iranians have shown when I say the Iranians, the regime has shown every iteration of what is wrong with a country that is led by an authoritarian regime. They seek to destabilize their entire region by violence. They have terrorist proxies. They seek, in a country that has some of the world's largest oil and natural gas reserves, you don't really need nuclear energy for domestic energy consumption. They have been on a march towards a nuclear weapon. We cannot allow that to happen. And they have shown their oppression against their own people. The sham trials, the hangings, the mass arrests, over 20,000. So I just hope that other countries that have been reticent, yes, this is not about intervention. The United States does not seek, nor does it want, nor will it intervene. But if the Iranian people alone are left without the support to create the environment, we must give them more than 20 minutes on VPN on Signal. We must do more than having code conversations on Zoom. We must, in a technologically advanced world, be able to give the Iranian people the opportunity to speak to each other and organize with each other in peaceful efforts to try to change their government. But from the outside, there is much that countries in the world can do. You have to hit it where it hurts them. You know, the reality is, whether it's the Revolutionary Guard, and it's cowards that send Revolutionary Guard members to rape Iranian women, and whether it's the Revolutionary Guard, whether it is the regime headed to its highest levels, whether it is on questions of oil, whether it is of questions of selling its drones, not only to Russia, but others that try to subvert global freedom. This has to be a collective effort, and I hope that our fellow parliamentarians from democratic countries in Europe and elsewhere join us, because if we do that, then we will create the openings for the Iranian people to decide their own future, which, of course, I hope will be secular, democratic, and part of the family of nations in which, you know, the Iranian people will thrive dramatically.
Друзья, ну вот так прошла Мюнхенская конференция безопасности. 2,5 дня, но очень насыщенных. И хочу еще, чтобы вы посмотрели, как я поднял вопрос по самолетам для Украины перед премьер-министром Британии Риши Сунаком.
Oleksiy Goncharenko, member of Ukrainian Parliament. First of all, that's my question. You know, it's F-16, and my question is when the training of our pilots will start. They said hello to you. They have a special gift for you I will give you after. But we just say us when they will start, because that is the prayer of Ukrainians today. Thank you.
Okay. And look, on fighter jets and provision, that's what we've announced doing. We're starting to train Ukrainian pilots on both NATO standard aircraft, but also in tactics. I think that's important. And that, when we talk about the long-term way to increase Ukraine's security, that's what we've started doing, and I think others will follow in time. Look, with jets, everyone knows that there are complications in the provision of particular types of aircraft, because everything that comes alongside that. But what we've said very clearly is where other countries are able to provide aircraft immediately, the United Kingdom will happily support them in doing that.
Кстати, ему и Нэнси Пелоси я подарил браслеты, сделанные из гильз от пуль, выпущенных украинской теробороной во время защиты Киева. Знаете, они очень это близко приняли, им были очень приятны эти подарки, и они их сразу надели, и Нэнси Пелоси, и Риши Сунак. А Риши Сунак даже оставил этот браслет на руке и пошел с ним на встречу с вице-президентом США Камалой Харрис. Я думаю, что он ему помог поставить на этой встрече самые главные, самые важные вопросы о победе Украины. Держим строй, друзья! Слава Украине!